Good morning, students. I hope everyone can see my screen. Welcome to day 6 training of Wipro Talent Next. Let me open my Eclipse also parallelly. Okay. Uh, in my last class, we have seen about the uses of super and final. I hope all of you have practiced them. And parallelly, I hope everyone is going through with the logic building exercises as well. And let us understand the forms of inheritance. So, in Java, we have various types of inheritance. Let's understand one after the other. The first one is the single level inheritance, wherein we have single parent and single child. That's it. We have single parent and single child. That's what we call single level inheritance. Next comes the multi level inheritance. In multi level inheritance, if you can recall the last class example, we have three classes. Let us say class A is there, and class B is the child of class A. Next, class C is the child of class B. Class D is the child of class C. So, like this is what we call as multi level inheritance. So, we call this as multi level inheritance, like grandparent, parent, child, grandchild, something like this. This we call as multi level inheritance. And next is the hierarchical inheritance. Hierarchical inheritance is nothing but tree structured. If we observe in a tree structure, we have different levels and different nodes, but if you consider any node, every node will be having only single parent. Every node will be having only single parent. So this is what the hierarchical inheritance. So these are the different types of inheritance Java supports directly. And multiple inheritance is one which is not supported by Java directly. In order to achieve multiple inheritance, Java makes use of the concept of interfaces, which we will come across in tomorrow's class. In tomorrow's session, I will be covering this abstract classes, interfaces, and then exception handling also I will discuss in tomorrow's class. So for today, just understand that among the inheritance forms, multiple inheritance is the one which is not supported by Java directly. Multiple inheritance is achieved with the concept of interfaces. And why multiple inheritance is not supported in Java? The reason is, as we all know that Java evolved after C++. Java evolved after C++. And since it have acquired all the best features and it have removed some of the features that are quite complex and confusing to the programmers as well as the end users. Since Java is evolved after C++, some of the complex and confusing concepts were removed from C++. And one thing is multiple inheritance. With multiple inheritance, what is the problem is, since a class can be inherited from more than one class, there will be more parents, and if something goes wrong, it will be difficult to identify the root cause. It will be difficult to identify the root cause, because if you consider a tree, if at any point of level, if there is any problem with any node, then it will be easy for you to traverse back until the root node, because you have only single path existing. In a tree structure, if you carefully observe, every node will be having only single path from the root. That means from the no from the particular node, if you have to go back to root, you will be having only one path existing. But whereas if you have more than one parent, if a particular node will be having more than one parent, it will be difficult to trace back, as you have so many paths. That is the reason, since it's complex and confusing to identify the problem, that's the reason multiple inheritance is not supported in Java directly. But in order to give that flavor, interfaces concept was provided by Java, through which multiple inheritance can still be achieved. As I said, in tomorrow's class we will discuss the abstract classes and interfaces concept anyway. And I have shown you how to use the super, all the super uses we have discussed. And even this overloading and overriding also, I hope everyone is comfortable with, yes, in my previous sessions examples. And we have discussed the difference between the overloading and overriding. So overloading means same class name with a different number of arguments or types of arguments defined in same class. I repeat, overloading means same method name within the same class with a different number of arguments or types of arguments. That is what overloading. Coming to overriding, parent and child class, same method name, same return type, same number of arguments, same types of arguments. Whatever the parent have defined, same method name, same return type, same number of arguments, same types of arguments. If it is redefined by the child, we call it method overriding. We call it method overriding. And in previous session, we also understood that if a method is declared final, then it can never be overridden. It can be overloaded, but it can never be overridden. That we have seen. And another point you should also remember here is, if a method is static, if a method is declared static, then also it cannot be overridden. This point also underline it. So final methods cannot be overridden, as well as static methods can also be can also not be overridden. Static methods also can't be overridden. Remember this point regarding overriding. And just like how we can override methods, we cannot override constructors. So constructor overloading you can do it, constructor overriding you can't do it. So what do you mean by constructor overriding? So as you know that constructor is a special kind of method which has exactly the same name as the class name. So how can you use the same class name in the child class? That's not possible. But what you can do is, you can define the child constructor, you can define the child constructor which will accept the arguments as given by the parent constructor. In addition to that, child constructor can have additional arguments. That is how you can do. But straight away constructor overriding is not possible. I hope everyone can understand the fact, because the parent class name as it is you can't define in the child class. So that's what constructor overloading is possible. Constructor overriding only through the child constructor. You can just redefine by adding some more arguments. That's how you can just do it. And yeah, that's what regarding the overriding and polymorphism. And let's understand the garbage collection very quickly. Let's see what is garbage collection in Java, how it is different from the garbage collection that you have studied with the C++, and let's examine it with a small piece of code, and then we will understand how garbage collection is useful in Java. So, what do you mean by garbage? Here, whatever the objects that were being created by the programmer or the user, so there may be a situation where these objects are unused, in that situation, as we know that heap memory is the place where all runtime allocations are taking place. Heap memory is the place where all runtime allocations are taking place, and heap memory is limited. Heap memory is limited. So utmost care need to be taken such that the applications that are continuously running will not run out of this heap memory. I hope everyone understood the point. So care need to be taken such that applications will not run out of memory, as your previous applications or previous programs have created lots of objects and have not deallocated them, for that reason, in C++ or some other languages, objects will be destroyed manually by using destructor concept. But in Java, we don't have any concept of destructor. Automatic deallocation will be taken care by Java's garbage collector. So Java's garbage collector will take care of this destruction of objects. So how long it will be running or how frequent it will be running, we cannot tell the exact time. Of how long it will be running or how periodically it will be running. So garbage collector is one such program which will be periodically run by JVM in order to deallocate the unused objects from the heap memory. So this is the point you just need to remember. Now let me open my Eclipse and let us understand from a small piece of code. And now let me create a new program for this. New and class, and let me use the name sample, and then let me just click on finish. Now a sample class is created. Now for better understanding, what I'll do is I'll just add some data, static int c, and then let me use a constructor sample. So I'm defining my own constructor, and I'm just writing a C++ here, nothing else apart from that. So what happens is, when I am writing C++, understand the fact that I have declared my integer variable as static, and it's a class variable, I mean the instance variable. So for each object I am creating, the constructor will be invoked, and what is happening? C is being incremented. Assume that C is a counter. And we know that all instance variables will be initialized to their default values. So here what happens is, when my class gets loaded, C will be initialized to 0, and since it is declared as static, for each object creation the constructor will be invoked, and since I am defining my own default constructor, since I am creating my own parameterless constructor, JVM's default constructor will not be added to my program. I hope everyone got this point. So int c is a instance variable which will be initialized to its default value since I have not initialized it, and since I declared it to be static, it will be the common variable that will be used by all the objects of the class. And since I am defining my own parameterless constructor to my class sample, no JVM's default constructor will be added to my class. So this is the point you should note down here. So now main. So control space and then just click it. Automatically you can generate it. And now for making you better understand, I'm just writing test ob1. Sorry, my class name is sample ob1 equal to new sample, and then let me create a few more objects with making this concept better understand. So sample ob2, ob3, ob4. Now if I just try to print this, number of objects created. So number of objects created is the string which I want it to be displayed on the console, plus I want the value to be displayed. So what I'm writing is sample dot c. Observe this, since the variable is static, I can directly access it without the object by using the class name. So this is the advantage by going for static variables declaration. So the variables or methods that are declared to be static can directly be accessed with the class name rather than the object. Now it's a very simple program. I hope you already got your answer before me running the program. And if I just run this program, you can easily understand what will be the output. So you can see number of objects created 4, number of objects created 4. So it's very simple program. Now why I have written this program is for making you better understand this use of garbage collection. Now after this, what I'm going to do is I'll just write this garbage collection understanding purpose. So runtime is a class r equal to runtime dot. So there is a get runtime method. So this get runtime, if you can see here, get runtime is a method of runtime class which returns runtime instance, which returns runtime instance. Understand here, get runtime is a method which is in the class runtime and which returns runtime type, runtime instance. I'm just using this method. So I hope you got the point here. So get runtime is also a static method. Get runtime is also a static method. Here you can see, because only static methods we can just call them with the class name itself. And now here what I am doing is r dot so here you can see free memory, r dot free memory. I'm just using this method. So r dot free memory, what this will be doing is this r dot free memory returns that freely available memory in bytes. What is the amount of freely available memory in bytes? So now you can see r dot free memory run as Java application. Oh sorry, I have to print it. What I'll do is here sys out okay. When I am just calling the method, it is returning, but since I am not displaying, we did not get any output. Now let's run this and see. Now you can see some value, that is 123480280. Understand, this is the number of bytes. This is the number of bytes that is free. This is the number of bytes that is free. Now let's make these objects null. Let's make these objects null. Okay, ob1 equal to null, ob2 equal to null, ob3 equal to null, ob4 equal to null. And after making this null, again let us run this statement free memory. And now I just want you to think of the output, what it will be. I just want you to think of the output, what it will be. Now observe carefully here. What I have done is, I have just created 4 objects, and after creating 4 objects, I have just displayed number of objects that were created, and it correctly returned 4. And then I have just created an instance, and then using that instance, I have tried to display the freely available memory. After getting the freely available memory, what I am doing is, I am just making all the 4 objects null. I'm just assigning all the 4 objects references to be null, and then again I'm trying to run the free memory. So I hope many of you have think of the output in your mind. Now if I just run this application, most of you might have been surprised. So you can see, even after making them null, still the free memory is same. Why? Even after making all 4 objects null, you can still see the same amount of free memory being displayed. So the reason is, when you are just making this OB1, OB2, OB3, OB4 null, you have not actually destroyed the memory in the heap. In previous sessions I have already said you, when you are writing something like this, here this will create the object in the heap, and this OB1, OB2, OB3, OB4 will be stored in the stack only, and they will be having pointers to the actual locations in the heap. That means, when I am writing OB1, OB2, OB3, OB4 as null, what I am making is, so whatever the references that are in the stack, the pointers I am setting them to null. I am just setting the pointers to null. So I have not actually destroyed the memory in the heap. I have not destroyed the memory in the heap. So now let me write one statement here, r dot gc. Observe here, r dot gc. So this gc stands for garbage collection. This gc stands for garbage collection. Now observe this. Now what I am doing, after running this r.gc, once again I am trying to print the free memory. Once again I am trying to print the free memory. Now let me run this and show you the difference. So now you can see the difference. I hope everyone can easily observe the difference. So what is this? This is the amount of free memory after 4 objects were created. What is this? This is the amount of free memory after 4 objects were set to null. That means only the references were made null, but not the actual destruction happened in the heap. And what is this? This is the amount of free bytes after I have run gc method through my program. After I have run gc method through my program, this is the amount of free bytes. So understand the fact, this can be one of the code snippet you can expect in the assessments in Wipro or some other place. So here, when you are making this object references null, you are actually only making the pointers null, but not destroying the actual objects. So when I write this gc method, when I run this gc method manually, then only the actual destruction takes place. Then only the actual destruction takes place. So understand this point. This is the purpose of the garbage collector method. And only for showing you, I have written this manually, but in general, periodically, JVM will automatically run this GC method. JVM will periodically run this GC method. So we don't require to do this. Just for making you understand, I have written this code. I hope everyone understood. Now, I want to make you understand here about one more method. We have a method called finalize. We have a method called finalize. So its signature is something like this: protected void finalize. Protected void finalize. So what is the purpose of this finalize method? The purpose of this finalize method is, so whenever the object is about to be destroyed, whenever the object is about to be destroyed in the heap, then this finalize method will be executed. So in general, why do we use this finalize method is, we might have opened some file pointers. I mean, we might have opened some files. We might have acquired some logs with a certain object. But before we closed those files, or before we released those logs that we have acquired through the object, what if the object gets removed from the heap? Understand the point? Suppose I have created an object, and using that object I have opened certain files, I have acquired certain logs, and what if before we released the logs that we acquired, or we did not close the files, and if the object gets destroyed in the heap? So what happens is, whoever tries to acquire those logs, they will be getting error because the lock is already in use. And whoever tries to open those files, they will be getting error saying that the file is already open. The reason is, you are not using it, and your object is also destroyed. But since you did not executed those statements that you have written as part of closing those files, or as part of releasing those logs, and the object is destroyed, the things were not exactly as you expected. That is the reason, in majority of the cases, what this finalize method will be used for is, in this finalize method, all the close operations of files and release of any acquired resources will be done in this finalize method. Because even if without your knowledge, if JVM runs the GC method, that is the garbage collector method, and chooses your object to be destroyed, and when your object is about to be destroyed, this finalize method will be executed, so that all the close operations and all the release of resource operations will be successfully performed, and then only your object will be completely erased from the heap. This is the purpose of the finalize method, and this finalize method is present in object class. In my previous sessions I said object is the supermost class in Java. Object is the supermost class in Java. That means if you have any class which is not extending from any other class, by default its parent is object class. And we know that all classes can acquire the properties of its parent unless they are private. We know the fact that with the inheritance, every class can acquire the properties of its parent unless they are private. And about this access specifiers also I'll discuss in tomorrow's class. We have public, private, protected, and if we don't use any access specifier, we call it to be default. And about these four access specifiers also we will discuss in tomorrow's class. Don't worry here. So just remember the fact that according to the inheritance concept, every class can acquire all the properties from its parent unless they are private. So here, if you observe, this particular class sample is not extending from any class, and as per the uh, statement what I just gave you, object is the supermost class in Java. So if a class is not extended from any other class, by default its parent is object class. And what am I saying here? This finalize method is the method of the object class. It is the method of the object class. Here you can see overrides finalize in object. Overrides finalize in object. So all the methods of object class can be used by any class, because object is the supermost class in Java. That means every class, whether it has parent or not, object is the parent for every class. That's the reason you can access all the methods of the object class. And what is the purpose of this finalize method? So all the closing of files or releasing of resources that were acquired by the object will be written in this finalize method, so that when the object is chosen to be destroyed, this finalize method will be first executed. After that, the object will be completely erased from the heap memory. So this point you should remember. Now here what I'll just write is, just for making us understand, I'll just write a system.out.println statement. Object is about to be destroyed. I just written one simple statement, object is about to be destroyed. And then even I'll just display now what is the number of objects, because I have created 4 objects now. So number of objects, and let me just concatenate and use this class name sample.c, because c is a static variable, so I can directly access it with the class name itself. And before that, let me decrement this. So you can see very simple code I have written in finalize. So object is about to be destroyed, and then I have just decremented c, because object will be removed, and then I have just displayed this sample.c. And let us run this and see what will be the code now. So now you can see number of objects here. Number of objects created 4, and this is the amount of free memory in bytes after 4 objects created. This is the amount of memory in bytes after 4 object references were made null. This is the amount of memory free in bytes after GC method is run. And this you can see object is about to be destroyed. Number of objects 3. That means when the first object is removed, and this one when the second object is removed from the heap. Similarly, the other two. This is the third object when it is being deleted, and this is when the last object is deleted. So this is what the purpose of the finalize method. So finalize method will be executed by JVM when the object is about to be erased completely from the heap memory. So this point you should remember as part of the garbage collection, and also understand the fact that garbage collection method will be run periodically by JVM. We need not execute it manually, but you are allowed to do as part of your program if required. How? By getting the instance of runtime. By getting the instance of runtime. How do you get the instance of runtime? This is how you get the instance of runtime. So runtime dot get runtime. So this get runtime method, which is a static method of runtime class, will return the instance of runtime. And using that, you can just invoke this GC method, and when this GC method is invoked, the finalize method will be executed whenever the object is being destroyed. So these are the things which you need to remember as part of this garbage collection. And this free memory is useful for knowing the amount of memory in bytes that is free. This is about this garbage collection. And after garbage collection, so we need to understand strings and string builder, string buffer. Strings and string buffer, very quickly I'll discuss with examples. So let me create another class, and let me name it string demo. So with this program, I'll just explain you the difference between strings and string buffer class. So I just named it as string demo, and let me click on finish. So a new file got created. Now for making you better understand, I'll just create a string s equal to, and some abcd, or you can even create a string in this fashion, but I want you to understand the difference. If I just write like this, char c equal to, in this fashion also you can just create a string from a character array as well. So here s directly, which is created as string, and str, which is created from the character array. So either of the way you can do, but you need to understand one fact, that is strings in Java are immutable. One thing what you need to understand here is strings in Java are immutable. That means you cannot modify strings that are created. You cannot modify the strings that are created, but you can create a new string by appending this string with another string like that. I mean, I cannot directly say like s of some 3 equal to e. This is illegal. This is illegal. Here you can see s of 3 equal to e. Directly you can't do something like this, because here s, which is created to be abcd, you can't access it by index. The only possible for you is converting it to character array. The only possible for you is converting it to character array. So you can't modify the string. Another thing, what you can just do is, suppose if I write a string s3 equal to some s plus efg. This is legal, because here I am creating a new string by making use of existing string, but I am not making any changes to existing string. As long as you don't do any changes to the uh, existing strings, nothing is problem. But only the point to be noted here is strings are immutable in Java. So for having mutable strings, we go for string buffer class. Just remember this statement: strings are immutable in Java. For having mutable strings, we go for string buffer in Java. This is the basic thing you need to remember. And suppose here, and one more thing, suppose if I am just observe here, if I just print sys out, control space, what happened? Suppose if I'm just writing this system.out.println and printing this str, so what is the error? Just hold on. System.out.println str. Why is this coming error? Just hold on. Okay, okay, I got it. So without any method, I'm trying to print this na. So statements we can't print it without method na. So that's the mistake what I'm making. I understood. Let me just put all these things in main method. Without main method, I'm just trying to print the statements. Declaration by default it will be considered to be class variables na. But when I'm trying to print things, obviously it will raise error because we can't write any statements outside the class. Sorry, outside the method. That's the error earlier it was giving. So there wasn't any method, and I'm just trying to print the statement. Okay, now let me show you this. Where is this run as? Yeah. So here you can see just ABCD. Now what is the point I'm trying to convey here is, suppose just see if I'm just writing this ABED. Now observe, I've just made this ABED, and then not there. If I just do this C of 2 equal to E. So observe this. Now what I am doing is, after creating the string with the character array, after creating the string with character array, I have just modified the second indexed character in the C array to E. That is, I just made it ABED. But if you observe, even after that, even after that, you can see the same output. The reason is, even though you make any changes to the original one through which you created the string, still it doesn't affect. Still it doesn't affect, because strings are immutable. This is the point to be noted here. Strings are immutable. That is the reason, even though I'm making the original character array through which I created the string, if I make any changes to that character array also, it doesn't affect. So this is one thing you just need to remember. And a few important methods that need to be familiar with this string class are, let me just define here some. Then let me define this as S1, and let me name this as S2. Then if S1 double equal to S2, then I just say same, else I'll just say not same. observe this. What will be the output? I just want you to think in your mind. So if you observe, S1 is Wipro Technologies, S2 is also declared to be Wipro Technologies. Here the point to be noted as S1 and S2 are assigned with Wipro Technologies. They are not created to be strings. They are assigned with some string value. So when I run this program, you can see that it is printing same. So it is saying S1 and S2 are same. Now observe this change what I am making. I hope everyone is able to see. Now observe what I have done. I have set S1 equal to new string of Wipro Technologies, S2 equal to Wipro Technologies. Now if I run this, this can be one of the way of asking you for just confusing you. Now here you can see the output not same. Now you can see the output not same. The reason is when you are assigning value to the strings, when you are assigning value to the strings, they will be considered to be same if the contents are same. They will be considered to be same if the contents are same. But if you are creating a string using new, if you are creating a string using new, even though the contents are same, if you are using double equal to, which is the comparison operator, it is returning not same. It is returning not same. That is the reason in applications generally we don't use this double equal to. Instead of double equal to, we will be always using this equals. We will be always using this equals method. So now what happens is this will be checking for the, this will check only for the contents, s1 dot equals of s2. So in real time applications we generally don't use this double equal to check for the strings, because we don't know whether the strings were created or were assigned using assignment operator. That's the reason we always prefer equals method check for checking the strings equality. Now you can see answer same. Now you can see the output being displayed same. So here now what is it checking for is, it's checking only for the contents. It's only checking for the contents. And apart from equals we also have another one. Now if you observe, what I have done is Wipro is in capitals. Now if I just run this, you can see the output not same. Actually both are Wipro Technologies only, but since it is Wipro in capitals, you can see the output being displayed as not same. So in that case what you can do is you can just use the methods equals ignore case. You can use the methods equals ignore case. If you use this method, it will not bother about the case. It will not bother about the case. So here you can see now output being displayed same. So this is the one which you need to remember. And similarly you have other methods uh, like let me just display directly sys out control space. If I just write s1 dot, you can just type in like this, or you can just go for control space and you can just get that index of, suppose if I give here let me say r, I'm just saying r. Now you can see, so from s1 I am asking for the index of r, so you will be getting the index position being displayed there. So -1 it have given. I hope you can understand the reason. So if you have that character in the original the string, it will return the index. If not found, it will return -1. Here in s1 I don't have small r, that is the reason it have displayed me -1. If I use capital R, you can get the index. So here when I have used small r, Since small r is not there in S1, it have displayed me -1. Now you can see 3. Now you can see the output being displayed 3. So here W is at index 0, I is at index 1, P is at index 2, so R is at index 3. That's the reason it have displayed me that one. Now similarly, I can even check for uh, one more is I'll just show you another one. Small e is there. Suppose if I have small e, index of small e, run as Java application. So you can see the output being displayed 7, because here in Wipro Technologies there are two e's. Here is one e and there is another e here. So if I want the last one, then I have another method called last index of. You have another method last index of. So index of will return the first occurrence of the character or string which you are searching for, whereas the last index of will return you the last occurrence of that character or string. So here you can see 16. You can just count it and check. There's nothing mistake. So index of will return you the first occurrence of that character or string, whereas last index of will return the last occurrence of that character or string. This is one more method, and similarly you can even do like and you have a trim method. Suppose if I just create here a string s3 equal to, I'm just writing some spaces, and I'm just writing hello, and I'm just using some more spaces. That's it. I'm just giving some spaces in between the string. So if I just print this, if I just print this, you can see the spaces were also being considered. The before spaces and after spaces were also displayed, but since it's empty, you can't see it. But suppose if I use, we have a method called trim. If I just use this trim method, what happens is it will remove the leading and trailing spaces. It will remove the leading and trailing spaces. All the before and end spaces will be removed, and but still you can see the space being displayed. The reason is, as I said, the original strings are unchangeable. So what you have to do is you have to go for another string creation. The original strings cannot never be altered. Remember the point. Now you can see I have taken another string and I have just performed the trim method, and I'm displaying that. Now you can see spaces were eliminated. So the leading and trailing spaces will be eliminated with the use of trim method. The leading and trailing spaces will be removed from the by using the trim method. And always remember, the original strings can never be altered. The original strings can never be altered. Suppose if I am using here s3 dot, if I use replace, and let me say here okay, I'll just write L with P. Observe, I have written L with P. So I am replacing L with P. And now if I run this, so you can see L is replaced by P. Instead of hello, it have displayed me some hippo. And the spaces will be there because trim is removed now. Because trim is removed. I have removed trim and I have just used replace. So this is one more method you can do. And similarly, another thing which you can also go for is, suppose if I go for substring, there's another method substring, and if I just write 2 comma 5, I'm just writing 2 comma 5. So observe this, I'm written 2 comma 5. So Okay, here spaces are there now. So what is happening is the spaces were being copied to this S4 substring. I'll just remove the spaces and show you, because spaces are there now. So what it have done is it have copied, it have taken the substring, but since it is spaces, we are unable to see it. I have removed the spaces. Now you can see LLO being displayed. Now what is happening? So 2 is the starting position, 5 is the end position, but excluding this 5 will be copied. So this is what the substring method useful for. So 2 comma 3 comma 4 indexes are copied, 2 comma 3 comma 4 indexes are copied to S4. So this is the point to be noted here. So this is the use of the substring method. So substring method will be taking, suppose if you ignore the end position, observe what happens. If I ignore the end position, I hope everyone understood. So if I ignore the end position up to the last it will be doing. It will be copying up to the last. That's the difference. By this you can understand the substring is a overloaded method in string class. Substring is a overloaded method in string class, where one is taking only one integer parameter, that's only the from position. The other substring method, which is taking two integer parameters, one is the from position, the other one is the last position. I mean to position. So this is the substring method that can be used. And suppose if I want to display, suppose if I want to display only the fourth character. So if I just say S3 of 4, so you can see it is giving error, because in S3 you have altogether 7 characters, but you are interested to display only the fourth character. You are interested to display only the fourth character. So straight away you can't do this, but one way what you can do is you can just use there is a two character array. You can just use this two character array, and then you can just give the required index. This is how you can do. So here you can see what I have done. So instead of directly giving the index for which I wanted to see, since I can't directly see it, I can just use the two character array, which will convert all the characters into array. So you can see L being displayed. So this is how you can just make use of the string class methods. So these are all the string class methods. And now coming to string buffer, here itself I'll just show you very quickly. So string buffer S5 equal to, so now you can see illegal. So unlike strings, you cannot directly assign string value directly to the string buffer. String buffers are to be created. String buffers are to be created. So I have to compulsory use like this new string buffer, and then you will be creating the string. So this is how you will be doing. This is how you will be doing using string buffer. And normal strings you can't even reverse by using predefined methods, because they are immutable, we have discussed now. But whereas with string buffer I can do the reverses also, like if I say sys out s5 dot reverse. So these are some of the advantages for going to string buffers. So now you can see welcome being displayed in reverse. So this you can't do it with string class. So string class will not let you to reverse the string, because they are immutable. And one more thing, what you can check with string is compare to. There is one more method, compare to. Suppose if I have here, okay, S4. Let me write it with. So here what I'll be doing is I'll just display this s3 dot compare to. So I can use a compare to know whether it is a smaller or a larger string than the other. So here you can see what I am doing. What's happening here? Okay, double quote is missing here. Save. Now here you can see s3 dot compare to I have used, and let me remove this statement. And if I run this, there you can see minus 32. There you can see the output being displayed minus 32. That means with reference to s3 it is giving me the value. So here it will check only for the very first unmatching character. Observe this, compared to what it is doing, it checks only for the very first unmatching character. So here the very first character itself is unmatching, that is capital H is 32 values difference with respect to ASCII, because capital letter starts from 65 whereas small letter starts from 97. ASCII values, capital alphabets starts from 65 whereas small alphabet starts from 97. So with a difference of 32, that's the value what you can see there. Since you are asking to compare s3 with s4, here you can see the difference. So since capital H is minus 32 positions are different from small h, it have displayed you minus 32 here. It have displayed minus 32. Observe that thing. Suppose, for suppose, here you see, if I have capital H and here and capital L, observe this. Observe this. Now what I have done, the first two characters are same here, including the case. Including the case, the first two characters are same. And coming to the third character, there is small l here, there is capital L here. Now if you just run this, you can see capital 32. You can see capital 32. So observe the point. Compare to method will check for the very first unmatching character, I mean non-matching character, and whichever is having it just checks for the ASCII value difference. It just returns the integer in terms of ASCII value difference. This is the point you just need to remember as part of strings. And string buffer, as I said, you can't directly initialize it just like a string. You have to go for creation of a string buffer object like this new string buffer, and then with using string buffer you can perform reverse operation. And another thing is you can also check for the capacity. You can also check for the capacity of string buffer. So what's the difference between length and capacity? How do you get the length? By using length method. I'll run that also. So here itself I'll write that also. Sys out control space s5 dot length. So this length method you can even use it with the strings also. So the length method basically returns the number of characters. It just returns the number of characters. So here I'm using s5 dot reverse, s5 dot length, s5 dot capacity. Observe the output 723. So welcome is of 7 characters. So the length have returned you 7, and capacity what it will do is, what is the maximum characters that can be stored in this particular string buffer. That's what the capacity returns, and always it is length plus 16. This is the simple rule that can be remembered. Always capacity returns length plus 16. Whatever the length is there, it will be adding plus 16 to it. Suppose if I just add 3 more character here, welcome CMR IT. If I just write like this, if you observe, I have added 6 more characters. I have added 6 more characters. So earlier it have displayed 7. Now let's see what it will do. Now you can see 13. So the length is 13 characters plus 16, 29. So always remember, capacity method of string buffer class will return plus 16 to the length. Plus 16 to the length. This is one thing which you can remember. And next what you can also add is, suppose if I write s5 dot append, there is a append method. So if I write s5 dot append, and here you can just add some. So here you can see I've just added some string here, s5 dot append, and then here if I just display this, and let me just run this. So here you can see, okay, since I have appended to the reverse string, you can see the reverse string appended with space and family. Whatever the space also I appended, that also got inserted. So after reversing I am doing now, that's why you got the output like this. Instead of welcome CMRIT family, I hope you understood the reason why it have displayed in reverse. And similarly, instead of append, you can also use s5 dot insert, because append by default it will append at last. Suppose if I want to append at middle, then I can write insert, and position if I say 8, and there again I can just give hi, something like this, just giving sorry, only here I can go for one character. Okay, okay, so it's cleared. So at 8th index I'm trying to insert something. Let us see the output. Okay, I think I'm not displaying it. Let's display it on C. S5 again, and once again run this. Yeah, here you can see high being inserted at 8th position, 8th index. HAI being inserted at 8th index. So this is how you can just do. And similarly, suppose if I want to delete any characters also, similarly I can do that. S5 dot delete, and here you can see you can delete single position character, or you can go for this. If I go for this, if I just say 8 comma 11 and semicolon, and let's display this s5. So you can see I have given 8 comma 11. That means from 8th index I'm just deleting up to 11. Up to 11 means excluding 11, excluding 11. So you can see again high being deleted, HAI being deleted. Whatever HAI I have inserted here, that I have just deleted. So this is how you can do. Instead of giving this like this, you can also give a single position also. So this is how you can just use this string buffer methods. So using string buffer, you can just modify the strings. This is the point you just need to note. Using string buffer, you can just modify the strings, which is not possible with the strings, because strings are immutable, whereas string buffer is useful for mutable strings. String buffer is useful for mutable strings. And you can just try this by just creating a string or string buffer, and then if you just give that s5 dot and control, automatically you can see all the possible methods, and there you can just move over there and get that you can just try them. You can just try them and understand how it will be useful. This is about string and string buffer. And okay, since it's already exceeding 1 hour, let's break here. And as I said, what we'll do tomorrow is, so here we have completed this oops or inheritance concept, because we have covered classes and objects. We have seen abstraction encapsulation. We have covered inheritance, and we have covered overloading overriding as part of this polymorphism, and then we have covered this garbage collection in today's class, and this string and string buffer just now we completed. So with this, oops or inheritance concept is completed. So in tomorrow's class, in the first 5 minutes, I'll just give the overview of Eclipse. Very important and required things I'll just show you in first 5 to 10 minutes of Eclipse overview, and then I'll begin with this abstraction packages exception handling. So as part of that, we will cover, most probably we will try to complete this abstract classes, packages, and interfaces. If time is sufficient, we will even complete this exception handling. Final keyword I have covered in yesterday's class itself. Sorry, in my last class. So that's what about tomorrow's plan. So we'll just have a simple overview about this Eclipse, and we will try to finish off this abstract classes, packages, and interfaces. Final keyword we have already covered. So exception handling, if time permits, we will start tomorrow, else day after tomorrow's class. I hope everyone understood today's session. You can just post your roll numbers in the comment section. You can start posting your roll numbers in the comment section, and if anybody have any doubts with regard to today's class, that also you can post it in the comment section. I'll just wait up until you all post your roll numbers in the comment section, and if anyone have any other queries with regard to today's concepts, you can even post that in the comment section, so that very quickly we will discuss that and close today's session. All of you kindly post your roll numbers in the comment section now. Okay then, I hope all of you have given your roll numbers in the comment section, and I have seen no queries. So let's wind up today's session, and tomorrow we shall meet again at same time at 10:30 a.m. And as I said, tomorrow's our agenda is to understand Eclipse very quickly, and then we will cover this abstract classes, packages, and interfaces. Okay then, bye.